Wait, before we even begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a room where someone walks in and immediately, without uttering a single word, everyone takes notice? Not because they're loud, not because they're trying, but because their energy speaks volumes. That kind of presence, silent yet magnetic, is the first secret most women don't even realize they're responding to. And the men who master it, they don't need to seduce with lines. They seduce with their aura. You see, women are deeply intuitive. We don't just listen with our ears, we feel with our entire bodies. A man who walks with calm certainty, who sits like he owns the space without needing to prove it, who doesn't fidget, doesn't seek attention, that man already triggers something primal. He radiates control, he radiates direction. And whether she admits it or not, she senses safety and strength in that stillness. The truth is, when a man doesn't feel the need to impress through his words, it's often because he's already convinced of his worth. And that inner knowing, it's louder than any scripted compliment. It's in the way he pauses before speaking, the way he observes instead of constantly performing, the way his silence feels full, not awkward. That's when a woman leans in, not because he said the perfect thing, but because he created a moment where she felt something she couldn't quite name. He's not showing off. He's not desperate for approval. He's just grounded. And that groundedness is electric. It creates a quiet confidence that sets him apart from the crowd of men trying too hard, talking too much, selling themselves like flashy products on a shelf. He doesn't need to sell. He already is the product. And the mystery of that, the confidence behind the silence, is what makes her pay attention. When a man walks into the room and doesn't speak much, but his presence makes her heart skip, that's not luck. That's intention. And it works not because he's trying to manipulate, but because he understands that the first seduction begins long before any physical touch or flirtatious line. It begins with a feeling, a subtle, powerful feeling that tells her this man is different. This man is sure of himself. This man doesn't chase attention, yet he has mine. That's the first step to seducing her without saying much. Speak with your presence. Let the silence build the tension. And when you do finally speak, every word will carry weight, because your energy already told her everything she needed to feel. Let me ask you something that might make you a little uncomfortable. When was the last time someone looked at you and you felt it in your chest? Not in a creepy way, not in a forced, over-the-top stare. I'm talking about a gaze that felt intentional, focused, and unshakably calm, one that didn't demand your attention but claimed it anyway. That kind of eye contact is rare, and when it happens, it bypasses logic and dives straight into emotion. That's why the men who master it don't need to say much. They are already creating emotional conversations without speaking at all. A playboy doesn't lock eyes with every woman in the room. He picks his moment. He doesn't rush. And when his eyes do meet hers, it's not to intimidate or overpower. It's to connect, even if just for a few seconds. But those seconds, they leave a mark. Because in those moments, it feels like she's not just being looked at, she's being seen. And for a woman, being truly seen is far more seductive than being told she's beautiful. What makes it powerful is the restraint. He doesn't hold her gaze too long because that would give it all away. He gives her just enough to stir something, just enough to say, I notice you, without needing to follow it up with a single word. And that pause, that little bit of tension in the air, becomes the first spark of chemistry. Women are highly attuned to subtleties. A glance across the room that lingers a beat too long, that's not random. That's a signal. And if it's delivered with calm confidence, no smirk, no performance, just pure presence, it hits different. It gets remembered. Because in a world full of men who don't know how to be still, a man who knows how to look her in the eyes without flinching becomes instantly unforgettable. The key is that it's not about dominance, it's about awareness. He's not staring to control. He's reading her. He's checking if she's open, if she feels the energy too. And when he senses she does, he pulls back, not to play games, but to let the tension grow naturally. That's how the silent seduction unfolds. Slowly, patiently, without a single line needing to be delivered. Because sometimes the most powerful communication is the one that happens between two people who haven't even spoken yet. It's in the way his eyes say, I see you, and the way hers reply, I know. That moment, it speaks louder than any pickup line ever could. And it's in that silent exchange that the real attraction begins. Have you ever been drawn to someone not because of what they told you, but because of what they didn't? Think about it. That one person who didn't overshare, didn't try to impress you with their story, didn't feel the need to explain everything, but somehow you couldn't stop thinking about them. That's not an accident. That's the power of mystery. And that is exactly what makes the silent playboy so dangerously effective on the first night. He's not putting everything on the table. He's not laying out his resume, his car, his money, or his past lovers. In fact, the less he says, the more curious she becomes. Because when you don't give it all away, you leave room for imagination. And the imagination, especially a woman's imagination, is far more seductive than any story a man could fabricate. A mysterious man activates that part of her mind that starts to fill in the blanks. What's he thinking? What's his story? Why does he seem so composed? Why do I want to know more? You see, most men make the mistake of talking too much too soon. They over-explain, overshare, and try to convince her, but a man who understands the game knows that real seduction is about restraint. He might answer a question with a small smirk and a half-truth, not to deceive, but to create curiosity. He's not evasive, he's just selective. He lets her know just enough to intrigue her and holds back just enough to make her lean in. That's the thing. She's not drawn to what she fully understands. She's drawn to what makes her wonder. That tension between knowing and not knowing becomes a powerful emotional thread, pulling her in deeper. She doesn't even realize it, but the less he says, the more her mind races. And the more her mind is involved, the more invested she becomes. It's no longer just about his looks or his words. It's about how he makes her feel. And he makes her feel something rare. Curiosity mixed with desire. It's important to realize that mystery isn't about being vague or pretending to be someone else. It's about owning your silence, knowing your value, and letting her discover it in layers, slowly, naturally, with each moment they share. He doesn't throw himself at her. He lets her peel him open, one piece at a time. That's what keeps her coming back. That's what makes her think about him long after he's gone. Because when a man becomes a puzzle she can't solve right away, he becomes unforgettable. And in the quiet spaces where he holds back, that's where her attraction begins to grow. Not because of what he said, but because of everything he didn't. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. Most women don't fall for the man who talks the most. They fall for the man who sees them. Not with grand gestures or poetic flattery, but with the kind of attention that feels intimate, personal, and almost too real. That's the quiet magic playboys understand. They don't focus on being loud or flashy. They focus on noticing what others miss. And that's why they seduce her, sometimes before the night is even halfway over. You see, in a world where everyone's trying to be heard, the rarest feeling is being seen. Not for your beauty or your body, but for the small details you didn't even realize someone was paying attention to. Maybe it's the way she plays with her necklace when she's nervous, the way she scans the room when she feels a little out of place, the way her voice drops when she talks about something that actually matters to her. Most men miss that, but not him. A real playboy doesn't compliment her like everyone else does. He doesn't need to tell her she looks beautiful, because she's already heard it 100 times tonight. Instead, he leans in with a quiet observation, something subtle, something specific. You've got this way of watching people like you're reading them, or you don't talk much, but your eyes give you away. It's not a line, it's an insight, and that insight tells her one thing loud and clear: he's paying attention. That's what makes her heart skip. Not the surface level words, but the feeling that someone is truly present. Someone who isn't rushing to impress, but is simply tuned in to her energy. And in that moment, she stops thinking about how she looks, what she's saying, or how she's coming across, because finally someone is making her feel seen without judgment. And that's when attraction shifts from flirtation to emotional connection. He's not flooding her with attention. He's giving her just enough focus in the right places to make her feel like she's the only woman in the room. And here's the secret. She starts opening up not because he asked all the right questions, but because his quiet presence created safety. That's something very few men know how to do, and even fewer know how to do without saying much. It's not about knowing the perfect thing to say. It's about knowing when to say nothing and let your attention speak instead. Because when she feels deeply seen, maybe for the first time in a long time, you've already stepped into a space no one else has reached. And once a woman feels that, she doesn't forget it. Let me stop you right here and ask something real. Do you really think seduction starts with touching her body? Because if that's what you believe, you've already missed the point. The real game doesn't begin on the skin, it begins in the emotions. And that's where most men fail without even realizing it. They chase the physical, hoping it will unlock attraction. But the ones who succeed, the ones who make her crave more, are the ones who understand that the most powerful touch happens before there's any actual touch at all. It starts with how he makes her feel, not flattered, not desired, but stirred. A woman responds to energy, to emotional cues, to atmosphere. And that's exactly what the quiet seducer knows how to create. He doesn't need to fill the silence with words or push for something physical. He lets the silence work. He lets the tension build. Because in those spaces between conversations, something more powerful is happening. Her mind is starting to wrap around his presence. Her emotions are beginning to respond before she even understands why. He listens. And not the fake kind of listening that waits for a turn to speak, but real listening, the kind that lets her feel safe, understood, even admired without being placed on a pedestal. That alone creates a connection most women don't get to experience in a world where they're constantly being talked at, not to. And because he doesn't rush, she doesn't feel like she's being hunted. She feels like she's being felt. And that changes everything. He asks just enough to open her up. Not deep therapy questions, not superficial flattery, just gentle curiosity. And then he waits. He gives her space to reveal. And that patience, that emotional stillness, that's the seduction. She starts associating him with peace, with comfort, with something slow and safe, but quietly thrilling. It's not fireworks. It's a slow burning fire, and it's 10 times more addictive. Because at the end of the day, what makes her lean in isn't just chemistry. It's how deeply she feels seen, felt, and emotionally disarmed. When a man reaches into that emotional core, she stops calculating. She stops judging. She starts feeling. And once she's there, once that wall lowers, the physical becomes inevitable. But now, it's not just about desire. It's about trust. It's about depth. It's about her choosing him, not just reacting to him. And that's the difference. The ones who try to get to her body first, forgettable. The ones who touch her emotions first, unforgettable. Let's get one thing clear. Chasing is not seduction. It's desperation wrapped in effort. The truth is, the man who tries to win her over by proving his worth rarely does. But the one who doesn't chase, the one who doesn't need to, that's the man she can't stop thinking about, because something in his energy says, I'm not here to beg for your attention. I am the attention. It's subtle but powerful. He enters the room with calm control, not hunger. He doesn't scan the crowd for validation. He knows who he is, and more importantly, he knows that she'll feel it without him having to announce it. That unbothered presence is magnetic because it speaks of emotional self-sufficiency, something that most women find irresistible but can't quite explain. When he interacts with her, it's not about impressing or performing. It's a quiet invitation, a vibe that says, you're welcome to come closer, but I'm not going to pull you in. And the irony is, that's what makes her lean in. It's not arrogance, it's detachment. It's not carelessness, it's self-respect. He isn't cold, but he isn't needy, and that balance is rare. And here's what's really happening. When a man doesn't chase, he shifts the dynamic. Instead of her being the prize he's trying to earn, he becomes the experience she's curious to explore. And because he's not pushing, she doesn't feel pressure. She feels space. Space to become intrigued. Space to feel safe. Space to explore him. She's drawn to him And the beauty of this approach is that it naturally filters out the noise. He doesn't have to convince her of anything. She either feels the pull or she doesn't. But if she does, it's real. It's organic. It's not manufactured by tactics or lines. It's born from a man who lives in his own world and is completely fine with or without her. This is why Playboys never look like they're trying hard. Because they're not. They don't attach their worth to whether or not a woman responds. They understand that seduction, at its core, is about energy, and energy doesn't need to scream to be felt. The quieter it is, the deeper it moves. So while others are running around trying to get her number, to impress, to conquer, he simply exists in a space of calm confidence. And from that space, she notices, she wonders, she engages. Not because he chased her, but because she felt something she couldn't find anywhere else. And that's when the real seduction begins. Not from his words, not from his looks, but from his decision to attract, not pursue.